18. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. So she ran and went to Simon Peter and the other disciple, the one whom Jesus loved, and said to them, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we do not know where they have laid him." Then Peter and the other disciple set out and went towards the tomb. The two were running together, but the other disciple outran Peter and reached the tomb first. He bent down to look in and saw the linen wrappings lying there, but he did not go in. Then Simon Peter came, following him, and went into the tomb. He saw the linen wrapping lying there, and the cloth that had been on Jesus' head was lying with the linen wrapping up here. Not lying with the linen wrapping, but rolled up in a place by itself. Then the other disciple who reached the tomb first went in, and he saw and believed. For yet they did not understand the scripture that he must rise from the dead. Then the disciples returned to home. But Mary Magdalene stood weeping outside the tomb. As she wept, she bent over and looked into the tomb. And there she saw two angels in white sitting in there. And the body of Jesus had been laying, one of them at his head and the other at his feet. They said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping?" She said to them, "They have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him." When she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there. But she did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Who are you looking for?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned and said to him in Hebrew, "Rabboni," which means teacher. Jesus said to her, Do not hold on to me, because I have not yet ascended to the Father. But go to my brothers and say to them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went and announced to the disciples, "I have seen the Lord." And she told them that he had said these things to her. This is the word of God for the people.
Thanks be to God.
And you may be seated.
I remember when my wife found out that she was pregnant. I remember the excitement of that moment. We had been married a couple of years, and we were serving. I was up in a town called Whitfield, Virginia. It's roughly about 8,000 people, and I was pastoring 4 churches at the time. You heard that right. I pastored 4 churches, and when I was pastoring those churches, I was all the time in, out of the hospital, here and there, everywhere. And my wife, working through a nonprofit agency, was also in and around everywhere doing stuff. And so we tried to keep secret that she was pregnant for as long as we could. But after she fainted for the second time in the Walmart, we kind of had to let the cat out of the bag. But we were excited. We were just over the moon. We were ecstatic that she was pregnant, and I remember we were very beautiful in making sure that we went to all of the necessary appointments. We were going to go in Whitfield, but in Whitfield, it was such a small town. They had a hospital, it was a county seat, but because I was in and out of the hospital, I saw the baby wall, and there were only 2 babies that had been born in that town in the last year. And so logistics-wise, we went to an OB that was roughly 50 minutes away, and to a hospital that was much larger. And we would go there, I think, 8 weeks for that checkup, and we went there at 12 weeks, and we went there at 16 weeks, and 20 weeks. You know, we were very careful in making sure that everything was followed to the letter. She took all her medicines, her prenatal vitamins. We had all the books, right, by the bedside. What to expect when you're expecting, what to expect when you expect that you're expecting, and so on and so forth. And I remember just being ecstatic. And the clincher of it all, at least in my mind, was that the due date was Easter Sunday. And so, on the one hand, I was really excited about that, and then on the other, of course, I was scratching my head. I thought, what's going to happen if the baby's born on Easter Sunday? What am I going to do about that? That's not exactly the day I want to miss. But we were ecstatic, we were excited, and we had everything planned out, everything prepared. We kind of knew how things were supposed to go. Now, contrast that with what's going on here in the scripture this morning. Contrast that with what we see is taking place there at the tomb. Early on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, Mary Magdalene came to the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed from the tomb. And then chaos breaks out. Everything was not going according to plan. In fact, everything had not been going according to plan. Jesus had come into the city triumphant, riding on a colt, on the foal of a donkey. Everyone had screamed, "Hallelujah, Hosanna, Hosanna in the highest heaven. Blessed is the one who comes in the name of the Lord. Hosanna in the highest heaven." And then within a few days' time, of course, Jesus had been hung upon the cross and died. And so those disciples, men and women, had just been eaten up by everything that had gone on. And they were grief-stricken in that moment. We sometimes tend to forget that, because when we get to Easter, and us in this day and this time, we are ready for Easter. We have the hats, we have the outfits, we have all the best candy, Reese's peanut butter cups, I think, the chocolate eggs, right? Yeah, I see it back there. We can debate that after service. But we kind of see it in hindsight. But at the time, there was that nervousness, there was that anxiety. Things were not going according to plan. Everything went according to plan for Rachel and me. We were going through all the visits until we got to the 30th week. We got to week 30. We did all the things you're supposed to do. You know, every time you go, you pack your bag and you get all the, clothes laid out and everything you might need. You just do that preliminary. So we went down the 50 minutes that it took to get down there, and it was 4 o'clock on a Thursday. And I remember, we went through those battery of tests, and everything checked out okay, except for 2 things. So he said, you know what we're going to do? We're just going to admit you to the hospital around the corner, just for 24 hours. And we said, okay. And so we got there about 5 o'clock that Thursday, and they started the test, and everything kind of came back well. Everything was going according to plan. And then that night, slept well, got up the next morning, test fine. We got to the afternoon. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd been there 23 hours. I had my bag packed. We were on the edge of our seat. We were ready to go. I buzzed the nurse. I said, hey, we need our papers. We need to go. She said, one last test. She came back 5 minutes later, and she said, these levels, they're not checking out right. Let the doctor come in and explain. So the doctor came in and proceeded to explain that they believed that she was in the early stages of the condition called preeclampsia. And it was just one of those things It happened, blood pressure, everything went too high. If it went too high, seizure, stroke, death. He said, I know this isn't what you planned, but we're going to have to deliver the baby. He said, it's 30 weeks. He said, I know. He said, but we can't do that here. I said, what do you mean we can't do that here? He said, we have a better hospital. It's another 40 minutes down the road. We're now an hour and a half from home. And it said, we may deliver the baby tonight. And so I remember it was February, it was late January, and I remember that it was cold, it was wet, it was 33 degrees and raining. If you can think of a worse temperature, I don't know what it is. Because it might ice, it might snow, it might sleet, it might do everything. And I remember they took her, she got on that gurney, they placed her in the back of the ambulance, and my life just kind of fell all to pieces. And everything that I knew and everything that I had planned, it was all just, it wasn't. And I remember they shut the doors, and I remember traveling in my own vehicle behind there, and yet wanting to be in there with her, but having to go back to my congregation. How was I going to tell them all of this? And I remember the lights flashing, and I remember calling my father-in-law, who's here with us this morning. I remember calling my father, trying to be, a man, and trying to say things without breaking down. And I remember getting to the hospital, and I remember being there when they put her in that room, and it wasn't one doctor, but it was 4 doctors, and it wasn't 2 nurses, but it was 4, and it was a teaching hospital, so there were 8 medical students around. There were 16 people at least around her bed, and I was sitting there, standing there in the corner, wanting them all to go away. And somehow we made it through that night. Into the next morning. The baby had yet to be delivered. When the disciples get there, they are confused. They are uncertain. They're in a state of shock. Presumably, the one whom Jesus loved, John, knew a little bit more about what was going on than Simon Peter did, but Mary Magdalene is, of course, grief-stricken in that moment. She does not know what to do. She is beside herself. It says in verse 11, but Mary stood weeping outside the tomb. And as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb, and she saw 2 angels in white. She didn't understand. They asked her, why are you weeping, woman? She said, I have taken away my Lord, and I do not know where they have laid him. And when she had said this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not know that it was Jesus. And Jesus said to her, woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you looking for? She says, the scripture says, supposing him to be the gardener, she said to him, sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away. Do we not feel like that in moments of extreme stress and chaos where everything's breaking down? If I can just get some semblance, if I can get some control, if I can get some hold on the situation, then somehow this will change. Just let me have the body to do what needs to be done. I remember we waited that morning after the 30th week, and we waited the next day. And I remember calling a very near and dear person in my congregation who I had really struck up a friendship with. I had had the chance to be by her son-in-law's bedside when he passed away from stomach cancer, and she would call me up and we would talk on a weekly basis. She was very, very kind, and she was also very, very wise. She had 5 children of her own, and she had a daycare out of her home. And out of that daycare, she had 10 or 12 there in the space of maybe a third of the size of this sanctuary. They were scuttling around all over the place all the time. And she said to me words that I will never forget. She said to me, Dawn, I want you to holler loud you to holler loud when it happens. And so I stuck that in the back of my brain. She said, I don't want you to worry about whether or not we'll get church taken care of on Sunday. I don't want you worrying about making sure that there are people you know you need to visit in the hospital. We'll get it all taken care of. I want you to be present with your wife, and I want you to holler loud when it happens. And I remember waiting and waiting and waiting as 30 weeks went into 31 weeks. They couldn't release her. They had to keep her there in that hospital bed. 31 weeks went into 32 weeks. 32 weeks went into 33 weeks. 33 weeks went into 34 weeks. 34 weeks went into 35 weeks. 5 weeks there in the hospital. And we were emotional wrecks. And I remember finally it got too much. She had maxed out all of her medicine. The magnesium was just making her feel as if she was poisoned. And everything was just maxed out. And so we called her father. Mother, we said, come up. And so they traveled from Oklahoma. They went overnight. They drove there in record time. They got there at 11 o'clock, 11:10, 11:20 the following evening. They were scheduled to do the surgery at the delivery at midnight. So I remember we got there, gathered there in that little hospital room, and we prayed everything that we could. And I remember after the prayer putting on the boots, and I remember putting on the gown, and I remember putting on the head piece, and then I remember I had a beard back then, put on the thing for the beard as well. And I remember waiting outside that operating room as they prepared. And I remember 5 minutes went by, 10 minutes went by, 12 minutes went by. And they opened the door and they said, you're a first-time dad. We want you to go this way. Don't look straight ahead. They said, look on the other side of the sheet. All you can see is your wife's head. And sit down there. And when you sit down there, just talk to her. And so I did, and we talked. And I don't remember what it was that we said. I really, honestly, the conversation. But as we talked and we talked and we talked, all of a sudden, after about 5 or 6 minutes, I said, did you hear what I think I heard? And she said, yeah. And I stood up, even though I wasn't quite supposed to yet. I stood up. And there was my daughter. And she was blue. And I said, hold on. This is not how the story is supposed to end. And right there before my eyes, she turned from blue to pink. And then they gave her to me, and they said, "Here's your daughter, what's her name?" I said, Anna Marie. I counted her toes. She had 10 of each. It wouldn't have mattered if she had 4 or 20. Her handprints make up these butterflies on my skull. She wasn't born on Easter Sunday, but she was a resurrection song nonetheless. And when everything seems as if it has gone wrong, the voice of Jesus reminds us, as it reminded Mary, Mary, it's I. It's your teacher, Rabboni. It's I, you remember. And I remember calling everybody I could think of under the sun. I hollered loud when it happened. And I remembered what Jane had said. Not holler loud if it happens, but holler loud when it happens. And so I remember hollering loud, just like Mary was instructed to do, just like those women were told to do at the tomb. She announced to the disciples, I have seen the Lord. And she told them that she had said these things to her. She hollered loud when it happened. You are called to holler loud when it happens. You are not called to be silent, despite the chaos and despite everything else in this world that would make it seem broken and unfair and impossible and beyond any way forward. You are called to proclaim and to preach the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I stand up here, but everyone out there is every bit as much a minister as I am. The gospel of Jesus Christ. And the good news today is that He is raised from the dead. He is risen. He is risen. Hallelujah. He is risen indeed. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit.